Today is Tuesday, October 25th, and we're taking things one day at a time here on the Outside the Oval podcast, the newest running experience on the internet. We've got a jam-packed episode for you all today on the eve of this weekend's conference championship. So, of course, I'll be breaking down a few conference races this weekend. And not only that, but to conclude today's show, I'll be joined by my friend Derek Rubis, who will announce his official national championship predictions for the first time. But kicking things off today, I'll be joined by my friend Sarah Watt, who runs for Queen's University of Charlotte. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm so happy to be here, Gavin. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to have you on the show today. I feel like our relationship is a great example as to how beautiful our sport is inside and out. We know each other through a few mutual friends, and that's ultimately how we met, which is something that happens often in our sport. But I think it's something we take for granted nowadays in our sport. Almost my entire friend circle currently runs or previously ran, and I appreciate everything our sport has to offer us. And now, whenever your team races ours, I'm able to know one additional person, which has got to be, it's definitely one of my favorite parts of traveling. And in fact, that's where I'll start today's episode at. As I was planning this episode, I made a few texts to our friend Michael, who's been on the show a few times to learn a little bit more about the running career and kind of life of Sarah Watt. And that's just about exactly what he said about you. Of course, you love to run. You've been competitive in it for a very long time. But in his words, he said, Sarah is a ridiculously hard worker, but she does it for a few more reasons than just to chase goals. Other things, such as friendships that come with it, are what drive her and are her biggest benefit and kind of motivation of working hard. So Sarah, could you talk a little bit about that? What about the running community that really helped you fall in love with the sport over the past several years? And to put it in your own words, what are your favorite things about the sport?
Okay, that was so nice. Thanks, Michael, first of all. So like he said, I have met literally my best friends because of running, which is a little crazy to think about. But yeah, it really does bring people together. And I didn't accept that until the later years of high school. I kind of spent a long time not resenting it, but at least not really enjoying it. I just did it for a result because I was successful on it. But then I don't know if you want me to get into Ohio XC camp now or later, but that was kind of like an instigator, and not to be too dramatic, but like it did change my life in a way of just like meeting these amazing people who like just show me that it could be fun, and just like seeing people with their teams together, which I kind of lacked. I had a team, but it wasn't as close of a group as like I saw some other schools in Ohio. But yeah, I don't know where I left off, but
yeah, absolutely. The Ohio Cross Country Camp, which I mentioned we'll get to later, was definitely one of those experiences I had where I was like, wow, this is what makes running special. Everyone coming together doing one common thing. And I think that's the exact quote I'll use later. But if we were to take a step a little bit back, and I feel like you were venturing there a little bit, you're still relatively new to running from what I've been told. You actually focused on soccer through your sophomore year of high school, and running wasn't necessarily your main sport. Like you said, you resented it. So what went into that decision to direct all your attention to distance running and really give up soccer?
Yeah, good question. So I did soccer growing up, and then stepped away from it in middle school because my school didn't have a girls team, and I just like wasn't super into it that much to like want to play with the guys. So, and my sisters did cross country, so it was just the path that was laid out for me, and I decided to take it without thinking too much about it, I'd say. But anyway, my sophomore year of high school, my school started a girls soccer program, and they were trying to get people out there, and I was like, oh, I absolutely want to be part of like the first inaugural girls soccer program. So I did it, and it was a lot of fun, and we actually won conference both years, so my sophomore and my junior year. So we weren't too bad, we weren't too shabby, but it was a lot of fun. So I was dual sporting with cross country at that time, and my cross country times definitely dropped a little bit because I wasn't, going to practices really at all. I think I maybe went to like one a week and just kind of relied on soccer. So yeah, I would get to like the end of like postseason and kind of still be disappointed in how I did. But yeah, I ended up stepping away from soccer because I guess I started thinking about my future a little bit more and what I wanted to do after high school. And both my sisters ran in college and one of my brothers. Um, and like that seemed really appealing to me. It worked out for them. So I was like, yeah, I think I could do that if I find the right school for me. And ultimately, Queens, that's what it was. They just like had everything I was looking for. And yeah, I kind of lost where I was going again. There was a point that I wanted to make. Oh yeah, but after my sophomore year of soccer is when I went to Ohio XC camp, and I was like, oh, all these people are really good at running. Imagine if I stopped playing soccer, I could like get good. So that's kind of what happened too. Is like I knew that there was like untapped potential there. If I could like dedicate everything to just one sport, like what would happen? And that's kind of how I still feel in college. Is just like if I keep trying, like what can I do? So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that thought kind of runs through my head a lot. Like, what am I going to think when I'm done running? Like, am I going to sit back and be like, wow, I had more in the tank? That's kind of what motivates me to work hard every day. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like you kind of alluded to it multiple times. Running is not the easiest sport to fall in love with. It takes a lot of time, requires an incredible amount of patience. However, I think everybody has that one moment or experience that they're never going to forget and that helped them fall in love with the sport. And in your case, you already mentioned it. I associate you with the Fleet Feet All Ohio Cross Country Camp in a big way, partially because that's ultimately what led us to becoming friends, but also because how much you seem to always enjoy it. And for those of you who don't know, Fleet Feet is one of, if not the biggest running stores in Ohio, and they put on this incredible high school cross country camp every year. It's great, a lot of fun, great place to meet new people while doing something we all love. So Sarah, could you talk about that camp, what it means to you, and maybe a few of your favorite moments as a camper and a counselor?
Yes, absolutely. So I actually heard about this camp from my dad, and I vividly remember him bringing it up to me because this is the point where I'm not really into running, and my dad's like sitting on the couch, and he's like, "There's this summer running camp. Do you want to do it?" And I truly did not. But my sister was going to be a counselor, my older sister, and she was kind of, like gonna hold my hand. I'm making air quotes, to like not be on my own, like going to it. So I was like, yeah, I'll go. And it was honestly to like make my dad happy a little bit, just because I knew he wanted me to go. Love you, Dad. But that was like kind of for you in a way. But anyway, I get there and I was just like not sure because I had never been to a running camp like that before, or just a running camp at all. And I didn't have a teammate to go with or anything. And my sister wasn't going to room with me because she was a counselor and I'm a camper. So I was just going in a little bit blind. And what I didn't know is most people came with their teams. So they all like knew people already. So I had to, turn on the charm to try to make a friend. And turns out that the girl who was across from me, like sharing the bathroom, like in the suite, was one of my best friends in the world to this day, Emma Beck. Shout out. And I remember her opening a door to the bathroom because we were about to leave. She came a little bit late, but we were like about to leave to go to this first little event. And she was like tying her shoe and she looked up at me. And this is like a memory in my head forever. She was like, "Hi, I'm Emma." I was like, "I'm Sarah." And, it blossomed, to say the least. Like we just had a lot of common. I had a lot of the same like struggles and things like that, and just kind of bonded over that. And yeah, I love Emma. She's such a genuine person, and I miss her a lot. But back to camp. Some of my favorite moments. Um, hmm. Honestly, like the runs were fine, but I don't think anybody's like favorite moments from camp are like the runs. It's just kind of like doing silly stuff at night and in between, just with people you meet and just meeting people, kind of being a little bit awkward. High school, middle school, just meeting people from who are your age who you don't really know. But so I would say like as a camper, really enjoyed Bombs Away. Great game over on the sand courts. Um, Talent show always gave me a good laugh. But as a counselor, I think the reason I decided to be a counselor this year is because of how much I took from being a camper, and I wanted to pay that forward to like the next generation, I guess. and I just wanted to give them a good experience and to try to like change their life. As dramatic as that sounds, like how it did for me, and just maybe try to make them like love the sport a little bit more and grow it a little bit more as well. So yeah, love being a counselor and just like connecting with the youth.
That's awesome that you were able to have that mindset. This camp gave me so much, so I'm going to give it back to them. Moving ahead a little bit, I am told you have a few favorite runners and they're incredible inspirations for you. So could you talk about who those are and how they inspire you?
Oh, okay. Um, yeah, okay. So I'm a huge fan of the On Athletics Club. Like they're top tier, great people. I don't know them, but I feel like one day I'm gonna meet them just because the running world is so small. I just feel like it's gonna happen. So I love Joe Klecker and Sage Herda. Maybe now Sage Klecker. I don't know what she goes by now. Congratulations on the marriage, guys. Right?
Yeah.
So I love them, and the Coffee Club Pod with Morgan, Ollie, and Jordy. That's just a great time to listen. My dad listens to it too, and we can like chat about it. So I love them. On the female side, I love Colin Quigley. And her Lululemon sponsor, that just takes her up to another level. Like, that's so cool. She was like the first to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So she's really cool. I made her pasta recipe just 2 nights ago. So not only on the track, but off the track, she's got it going on too.
How was that?
It was delicious. I made it for our supper club with a couple of my friends. So I was week 1 supper club, just knocked it out of the park with that. Some other faves. I'm trying to think who I follow like on Strava and stuff. I mean, Alicia Monson, she's in On Athletics Club as well.
Mm-hmm.
She's great. I think those are my faves. Yeah, On is just like they're doing so much cool stuff with their brand, and the marketing and just everything about their company is just like they're up next.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it.
They're doing it right there on Running
They're doing
Club.
it right.
Mm-hmm. Something that I think we all wanted Tin Man to succeed, and they just didn't have it on the track. And ultimately, that's what matters most, what you do on the track. But at the end of the day, On Running's doing it on the track and on and off the track. They're doing it right. But anyway, like I mentioned before, you now compete for Queen's University of Charlotte, and you even compete in the same conference as me in the ASUN. I look forward to seeing you this weekend in Huntsville.
Yeah.
But you've seen a lot of improvement since high school, and you're only in the midst of your 3rd semester in college. So what would you attribute to that? And in general, how has your college experience been so far?
Ooh, okay. So I'll start with the first one. What would I attribute my like successes to? Me, probably like anybody else, has probably Google searched like how to get better at running, or like stuff like that. And you'll get the same stupid answers every time. But it really is just like showing up every single day and doing it. Like, unfortunately, it's not overnight, and it's just like over time you have to be really patient, which I think I have been. But yeah, I would say consistency is number 1, and staying healthy, but that's just like such a loaded answer. I like that so much goes into that. And I haven't done it perfectly at all. Like I had a couple of injuries here and there. Nothing major, but just stuff that takes away from being consistent. Yeah, I think having fun too. I mean, if you're not having fun, it's not going to be sustainable, and you're not going to be doing it for a long time. So making sure that the team that you're with are like people who lift you up and you can have fun with. And as long as I'm laughing at practice, like it's a good day. Whether the workout goes bad or good, if I can have fun throughout it, I mean, that's what matters, just for those little bits of the day, because like practice is kind of my favorite time of the day to just see all my friends get in some good work. And how has my college experience been so far? It has been a positive experience thus far. Obviously highs and lows, but everybody has that. Like anywhere you go, you're going to find things you love and things you don't love. Like there's always something, but overall, like Queens has been amazing. It's super cool to be in Charlotte, being from a very small town in Ohio. Like just the accessibility and opportunity to like restaurants, coffee shops, just a mall is like 10 minutes away now, and it used to be an hour. So like these things are crazy. And just like concerts, venues, like it's all here, and it's so nice. But still being at a small university like Queens, I like have the intimacy with, I don't know, my professors and just like having a smaller campus. So I'm not kind of lost in the
Mhm.
sauce of like a huge university. Just feeling lost because that would be a lot because my graduating class was like 135. So now my class sizes are like 20. So I know everybody in my class, my professors know me. So it's like the best of both worlds that I still have like a small community, but this big opportunity outside of it. So it's been really good. I've met some of the best people ever too, and that's what matters. Your relationships are like number one. So yeah, college experience is going well, but hard times are also there.
That's in every life that happened. I'm glad you're able to find the light. But then I took away from that, Lost in the Sauce. Haven't heard that one in a long time. Going to bring that one back. I like it. Um, I know we talked earlier about how you're a little bit less goal oriented as a runner and instead a little bit more motivated by your external factors, but you're still a very competitive Division One runner. So I know you got to have some goals within the sport. Could you talk about what some of those are? Maybe future goals, more closer goals, short term.
Yeah, absolutely. So like some of the goals that I wrote down for this year is just to score at conference for my team. I try to like stay team oriented as much as I can, especially this year because transitioning from Division Two to Division One, we're in this horrible transition period of like 4 years where you can't compete at nationals. So that's a little bit of a bummer because that was always kind of something on my radar. Like as a high schooler or even a freshman, I was like, "Ooh, I want to go to Division Two nationals one day." But now, you know, who knows where these next few years will take me? But I can't. That's like not a goal I can have right now,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, just due to the NCAA rules. So that's a
Of
bummer.
course.
But yeah, so I guess like short term, very short term, like on Saturday, I want to score for Queens at conference and score as little as possible to contribute to that team score. On the track, my favorite event's the 15 right now. So I had a really great race at the end of last year at conference. And the story of that was just like, I ran my first 1500 in like March, and then I ran like 3 or 4 more, and I just ran either the same time or worse. And I was just getting really frustrated because my training was going like pretty well. And I was just like, where are these results? And then finally at the conference meet, I like dropped 3 seconds. And it was just like an amazing feeling. And honestly, probably the best race I've ever done. And that kind of keeps me coming back for more. And I'm just really excited to keep doing that again. I really would love to have another experience like that in indoor in the mile and then outdoor in the 15. So I just love that race. It's not too long. I really struggled with the 5Ks this past year. So to break the like 18-minute barrier would be great. I really thought I could do it last year, but just never came together. So yeah, I think everybody loves a good time barrier, like especially like breaking, like sub like 4 in the mile or something, or like anything that's below the big number. I think everybody likes that.
Oh,
So definitely chasing after that. Honestly, just to like PR and everything. I think I could. I think I'm in a lot better shape this year than I was last year. So I think it's definitely feasible. And yeah, stay healthy, major.
absolutely. Lastly, though, Sarah, recently I've been wanting to get back to the roots of the name of the show outside the oval because recently I feel like I've strayed away from that concept. And I feel like I told you before we started recording today that I feel like this episode is going to do that. But there's no better time than the present to change things for the better. So, Sarah, let's move away for running for one more time. Let's take things outside the oval for the last question for today. What are some things that you often do when you're not running and bring you the most happiness?
Ooh, that's a lovely, lovely question, Gavin. Some things that bring me the most happiness. I think immediately what my mind goes to is just spending time with my loved ones, whether that be my parents, my family, my niece and nephew, love them. And then just like my close friends. I love taking a nap. I love a good nap. I love cooking and baking, which I'm definitely missing at college. I don't get to do it as much now because it's just a little bit busy, but I love doing that when I have free time um, to like not only nourish myself but to give to other people and just like nourish them, show them I care. So I love doing that. Love taking walks, silly little walks. Um, probably will be doing that when I listen to this. I might just go on a little walk with my AirPods, listen outside the oval. So that's really good to just like kind of get away from your screens. I love doing that. I mean, I'm still like listening to something, but just like move, not think about school or running. So I just love walking around. And reading. I also have been not on my reading grind lately. I just feel really busy lately, but I love reading. Just like I love a good like nonfiction self help book. That's right up my alley, or a memoir. I love memoirs.
Yeah, the book thing is also something I struggle with since we've gotten to college. Napping too. I
know.
don't do enough of both of those, but we definitely share different passions when it comes to what kind of books we read. I'm more of a fiction guy myself. maybe something a little bit out there. But regardless, Sarah, it's been awesome getting to know you more today, and I appreciate you hopping on the show.
Yes, thanks again, Gavin. I feel so special.
Yeah, for sure. And please stick around because coming up next, I'll break down the men's ACC and SEC championship races, as well as the women's Big Ten championship races, while also making a few other predictions across the country. And we'll be right back. Welcome back to Outside the Oval. I hope you enjoyed my discussion with Sarah Watts. Really enjoyed having her on the show and look forward to having her on again in the future. But of course, there's some business we need to attend to because it's finally here. Welcome to the first week of the cross-country postseason. In a little more than 3 weeks, we're all going to look back and wonder where the rest of the season went. But for now, let's enjoy what's left of the season. And before we dive into the meat of this week's conference championship week preview, I'd like to take this moment to truly appreciate the current cross-country season because I believe we're currently witnessing one of the most bizarre cross-country seasons in recent memory. And everything's going to culminate in Stillwater on November 19th to make for an incredibly chaotic finish to the season. First, taking a look at the men's side, I'm sure you've heard me ramble on and on about this many times by now, but we have to go over it again because it's just so compelling. I would make the argument there are still about 10 individuals who are capable of winning the individual championship. And in the next 3 weeks, we will really start to dive in and break down those legitimate contenders in each race. But for the time being, it's best we simply bask in the fact that this may be the most entertaining front pack there's ever been at the national stage. We can't forget about the team battle either. Stanford and BYU seem to have separated themselves, but would not count out Oklahoma State. I am still in love with this Cowboy team. I've been told that we may see their top 5 at full strength at some point this postseason, perhaps as soon as the Big 12 championships. But not only that, I've seen a few photos circulating of the top 5 working out together. That top 5 I'm talking about would consist of Alex Mayer, Victor Shitsama, Rory Leonard, and then Isaiah Rodriguez and Shea Foster, both of whom have not raced yet this season. And don't get me started on what's happening in Flagstaff, but you would be mistaken if you believe that they won't become a factor this November. And then on the women's side, there seems to be a consensus number 1, but I'm still in the small kind of group that believes someone else is going to win this race. And now before I continue, I do believe that Tui is still deserving of that number 1 ranking. If you check on my Instagram and Twitter pages, I still have Tui ranked number 1, made that post yesterday. And at the end of the day, she's still the best runner in the country right now. But from Parker Valby, who just blew the lid off the championship race with her sub-19 6K in College Station last week, and 2-time national champion Mercy Chalangat, who relatively has cooled off as of late, both of them still pose a threat to Tui, and there's still a lot of star power right on her heels. But that's even before we start talking about Cilly McCabe, Natalie Cook, and Taylor Rowe. I'm very much looking forward to that race, as well as an NC State versus New Mexico duel. But before all of that comes to a head, we still have Conference Championship Week to talk about, and there are really 4 races I really have my eye on this week. For the most part, a lot of these conference championships will go as expected. I can't imagine Washington, Oregon, or Colorado knocking off Stanford out west in the men's Pac-12 championship. And New Mexico, they probably should handle Colorado State on the women's side of things in the Mountain West. However, not every championship race will go as expected. Let's go ahead and start on the women's side. In the Big Ten, where number 17 Wisconsin, number 22 Ohio State,
number 23 Michigan State, and number 26 Michigan all have a chance to walk away as the next Big Ten champions. I like Ohio State, though, in Ann Arbor a lot. I had Michael on the show last week, and I think he hit on this very well. These conference championship races will be much less crowded than a lot of the invitationals that we've seen run this season. For instance, Ohio State, they came up short against Michigan State at Roy Griak, but that race included a much deeper field of teams, including Utah and Cal Baptist. And this applies here because the Buckeyes have a lethal 1, 2, and 3. Addie Engel, Danielle Santos, and Andrea Kuhn have all had spectacular seasons, and they've run really well, including at the Roy Griak, the meet we just mentioned. But the difference makers for this weekend's contest are really going to come in the back of the pack. Since the Griak race, the Buckeyes, they're number 4 and number 5, Molly Schmidt and Akimi Von Schurer, have both dropped roughly a minute off their 6K times. In a race where there will be less runners, this is going to make all the difference in the world, in my opinion. I love the Buckeyes in this race, and I really like their chances of making up ground on Michigan State's and Wisconsin's strong pack of runners. I believe they're going to take home their first ever Women's Big Ten championship. As strange as that is to say, very surprised they'd never pulled that off, but I do think that this weekend is the time to do it. Then in the Pac-12, there's a laundry list of teams who could really win this one. 5 to be exact. Number 8, Stanford. Number 9, Utah. Number 10, Colorado. Number 12, Oregon. And number 19, Washington, who just recently dropped 10 spots from that number 9 spot last week. But in such a close race, it's really anybody's race this weekend, and it's really all going to come down to who has the best race on that day. Now, I've been high on Oregon all year. Coach Sherry Schumacher has done wonders with this very talented roster, and he's developed a tremendous amount of depth. I believe I've been preaching for a while now that they'll be in the thick of it come November, and now they're finally receiving that recognition they deserve, jumping from that 21st spot to 12th this week. However, I don't think it's going to be enough to necessarily beat the teams like Utah and Stanford. With that being said, I find it difficult to pick against Utah, like I mentioned. Stanford, who beat Utah head-to-head at Nuttycombe, and Colorado, I'm sure will be the two most popular picks come this weekend. But Utah's really been rolling as of late. They have the low stick they need in Emily Venters, who has been incredible this season and is quite possibly a favorite to be an All-American. But Venters is also quickly followed by 3 others who all finished inside the top 60 at Nuttycombe. This team is unfortunately plagued with a 5th spot issue. However, I'm very optimistic that this week will be the week that this is no longer a problem. Utah's 5th spot has been traded back and forth between a group of girls all year, creating a competitive race for that 5th spot. Now, we're in the postseason. I wouldn't be surprised if one of these girls, Erin Vringer or Lauren Peterson, did not step in a huge way and really push the Utes past Stanford and Oregon. So I'm taking Utah this weekend in the Pac-12 women's race. But another team I want to feature in that race is Colorado, because they're very interesting the way they're kind of created. The Buffaloes are a team I would have figured would have run away with this conference at the beginning of the season. But Emily Covert has not been the runner she was in 2021, despite Bailey Hardestein's breakout season. The Buffaloes were depleted following the departures of Abby Nichols and India Johnson. That's something we need to acknowledge, but they're still a pretty young squad. I wouldn't expect them to stay out of there very long, and I would imagine they're going to be the favorites heading into 2023 in the Pac-12. But for now, I like Stanford and Oregon to beat them. But moving on to the men's side of things, let's take a look at the SEC real quickly. I think it looks pretty clear that either number 17 Tennessee or number 22 Alabama will take this contest. Arkansas and Ole Miss have both plummeted down the rankings, and they kind of look like relics of their past this season. And to be honest, Kentucky is just a little bit too far from making any impact on this race, yet they've come close to Alabama a few times. With that being said, I'm taking Alabama in this contest. But come regionals and nationals, don't sleep on the Volunteers. I'm taking Tennessee to pass them at the regional meet and win that South Regional. And we'll talk about that next week as the regional predictions begin. With that being said, Victor Kiprop, he's been incredible in 2022, and he's been quickly followed by his teammates Eliud Kipsang and Hilly Chariot in each race this season. And the SEC is not necessarily the deepest conference. Most of this Crimson Tide, their struggles have come with their number 4 and 5 runners. I think Alabama they're going to have a pretty clear strategy heading into this one, which should be latching onto Kentucky's gigantic pack hovering around that 24-minute mark. And if it is remotely close to being followed, it should be enough to beat Tennessee, even if Dylan Jacobs and Yassine Abdallah were to be number 1 and 2 in this race. But my favorite race of this weekend has got to be the men's ACC championship. I mentioned last week that it would appear to be Notre Dame versus Wake Forest, but I'm not convinced that Virginia, North Carolina, and even NC State, who I believe is ranked higher than those two squads, will simply lay over for the top two teams. Notre Dame, they look to lead at Nuttycombe. Carter Solomon, he is emerging as a potential star. He finished 9th. However, I put more stock into Wake Forest's 6th place finish at the Cowboy Jamboree in the grand scheme of things. Not only was this at the national championship course, but it was against the consensus top 5 teams in the nation, the 5 we've mentioned so many times this year. However, again, this is the conference championship racing we've been talking about. This is not the national championship. That is why I believe teams like North Carolina and Virginia are still very much alive in this one. Virginia, they've shown that they can pack run in a large group under 24 minutes, which could be all it takes to win a title at their home course. However, it would take a lot to make up 21 points against Wake Forest, which is the defeat they took at their own home course, which is where the ACC championship is, in a very similar field as the XC23 last weekend. Notre Dame, on the other hand, they demolished North Carolina, just under 200 points at Nuttycombe. Yeah, I still think this North Carolina team stands a better chance when at full strength. If we take a look down North Carolina's lineup at Nuttycombe, there were a lot of places for concern. But Patrick Anderson, he's been finishing just behind Parker Wolf all season, whereas he's 123 spots behind him at Nuttycombe. Now, like I said, that's a little bit of cause for concern. Overtraining, maybe he just doesn't have any more. Whatever the case is, that's a lot of points, and I do believe that Patrick Anderson is going to assert himself at this ACC championship meet, and it's not going to go like it did at Nuttycombe. And at the ACC championships, I really do believe that this Wolf-Anderson tandem can stand up to Wake Forest's 1-2 punch, including Zach Falcone and Notre Dame's kind of 1-2 punch with Carter Solomon and Josh Methner as well. With it being said, I'm still going with the Demon Deacons this weekend. I like their depth a lot more than anybody else, and I just think it's too much for Notre Dame, North Carolina, and Virginia to overcome. Falcone looked like a star last week, to keep it simple. While, Aaron Las Herreras, he didn't race last week, and they still put a whooping on this Virginia team, and I'm sure he's going to be a beneficial addition, barring an injury he might be having, to the stellar team that raced last week in Charlottesville. But regardless of what happens, this weekend of racing is sure to be a good one. With 3 races left, there is still a lot to figure out, but any questions we may still have should be answered this weekend. The days of wondering who will and who will not race, they're long gone. We're going to see Dylan Jacobs run this week. We're going to see Yassine Abdallah race this week, and that's just Tennessee. And we're really going to see everyone in action, which is going to be super exciting. Such an exciting time for our sport as national approaches. And because of that, I have running superfan Derek Rubis joining me next to officially announce his picks for the national championships in Stillwater this November. And that's all for today's conference championship review. We're going to take a quick break here.
Welcome back to this special segment of Outside the Oval. Anchoring today's episode, I am joined by Derek Rubis, who you may have seen on Twitter and Instagram. Derek, it is great to finally have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a new segment I'm going to try and implement at the end of each show for the next 4 weeks, leading up to the NCAA championships in Stillwater. And I couldn't think of a better way to kick it off than with the hub of distance running himself. So we'll kick things off on the men's side, first taking a look at the individual battle. Over the past few weeks, a few runners seem to have separated themselves from others, but it is entirely too early to draw an overwhelming favorite. You have Alex Mayer, who won the Cowboy Jamboree, and Kai Robinson, who won at Nuttycombe this weekend. They seem to be generating most of the buzz as of right now, but runners such as Nico Young, Charles Hicks, and even Dylan Jacobs are still lingering. So, Derek, let's start there. Who do you think brings home the individual championship and why?
My top 2 are Nico Young and Drew Bosley.
Yeah, right now those two definitely seem to be rolling. I'm a big fan of Bosley this year, being on my fantasy cross-country team. But they definitely seem to have an edge on others that we haven't really seen yet. I feel like NAU always tapers at the right time. I like those picks, actually. I know you warned me beforehand that I might not like them. I like those two picks. I definitely think the NAU boys are being slept on this year.
And I still love my Stanford 3. I love them like family, so those 3 are going to be up there. And I've got a couple of underdogs on the thing. I got Sam Gilman, Jordan from Portland State, and Bob Liking.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Bob Liking had a great race at the Nuttycombe, and he's really asserted himself into that championship picture. But we'll move ahead as we take a look at the team battle. I still think we've got an interesting race ahead of us. Stanford, they seem to be ahead of everyone right now. Their 1-3 punch, like you mentioned, is next to none. And at both Cowboy Jamboree and Nuttycombe Invite, they had someone step up and finish inside the top 14 as their number 4. And it looks like it will come down to whether or not they can put it all together on November 19th. Looking elsewhere, though, we already mentioned Northern Arizona. They look bulletproof for the first time in several years. Nico Young and Drew Bosley, like we mentioned, a very promising 1-2 punch, but the disappointing start to the seasons from Brody Hastings and George Quaish have been devastating to this team, but it's certainly still in the thick of it with just a month left and 3 races still to go. Then, of course, there's BYU and Oklahoma State. BYU, they look like the best-built team and most capable of knocking off Stanford. They're led by Kleiner and Allen, and at the top, and then followed by emerging superstar Joey Noakes, as well as Brandon Garnica, Aiden Troutner, and Creedon Davin Thompson. This team has 7 potential All-Americans on their roster. So come Nationals, given the amount of competitive runners BYU can put in front of Stanford's 4 and 5, I still think BYU is in the best position to take this away from Stanford. And then wrapping things up, Oklahoma State, who has seemingly cooled off as of late, but we have to remember they've got a really good team. We've yet to see this team at full strength yet. Alex Mayer and Victor Shitsama were lethal at the Cowboy Jamboree, and since then their depth have stepped up. Rory Leonard, Ryan Shoppy, Will Muirhead, they've all had promising seasons up to this point, and that is without the addition of Isaiah Rodriguez, who is sure to give this team a much-needed spark. And without Shea Foster, I don't think this team is necessarily capable of knocking off both Stanford and BYU. But crazier things have happened, and that's my rundown of things. Derek, I will let you speak on some things now. Who do you like in the team battle, and why?
My family, NAU, is going to win the whole thing. And you should watch out for Air Force.
Yeah.
They got fifth at Nuttycombe, so you better watch out for those guys.
Yeah, I loved what I saw from Air Force. I mean, they almost took down Northern Arizona, and that's nothing to forget about. I think they took down a very talented Tulsa team. Sam Gilman's running up to the potential we saw him do at the end of the track season. So I really like what we saw at Air Force, and you can't discount Coach Mike Smith. He knows more than us, and that's why he's coaching at Northern Arizona. I trust him. It sounds like you trust him, and I think he's going to have a very competitive squad at the national meet. But if we move on, we can take a look at the women's side now. This cross-country season kind of appeared to be the coronation of Caitlin Toohey. Of course, she had a great spring track season, but this is where it's all supposed to come together. In the preseason, it was a debate between Toohey and Mercy Chalangat, who Toohey would go on to beat comfortably by 12 seconds at South Bend. But now it seems like it's not necessarily Toohey's race to lose, because Parker Valby has returned, and she ran a blazing sub-19 6K and finally forced her way into championship conversation. And along with Valby, I still believe Natalie Cook is still a legitimate threat to win as well. I love the way she trains. She's strong, and she's going to have home course advantage that I'm afraid a lot of people are going to overlook. And you can't count out Chalangat, Taylor Rowe, or even Sally McCabe, Kelsey Chimmel, or Grace Forbes. So many great racers in this race. Derek, I got to know, who do you like on the girls' side and why?
Caitlin Toohey for the win. And there's 3 that I think are going to be underdogs, even though they're going to be part of NC State. But Sydney, Sam, Bush, and Savannah, you better watch out for those 3. I think they're going to get in the top 10.
Oh, yeah. So much lethal strength at the bottom of that order for NC State. I really do think they're just waiting for that one race, and it very well could come at that Stillwater race on November 19th. And lastly, if we take a look at the team battle now on the women's side, I think it's safe to say there's 5 teams in the mix. And it sounds like you have a favorite of those 5. But it really does seem like there's 2 championship contenders. And those 2 teams, to nobody's surprise, NC State and New Mexico State. And I've been high on the Lobos all year and truly feel as if this team they have what it takes to knock off the heavy favorites and ruin NC State's chance at a repeat. So, Derek, what do you think? Are you going with the grain in NC State, which it sounds like you are? Are you going with the underdog in the Lobos, or perhaps going with a wild card such as Oklahoma State, Alabama, or even BYU?
I'm going second is going to be New Mexico and NC State for the win for second year in a row.
Sounds right. If you have all those NC State runners finishing in the top 10, it would be very hard to find a way that this team doesn't finish ahead of New Mexico State. We have such a great slate coming up on November 19th. I'm super excited. I'm going to be down in Stillwater for that race. And I hope there's good coverage wherever you are, Derek, so you can watch it. The ESPN seems to do a great job every year, though, covering the cross-country championship meet.
Yep.
So looking forward to having that. I'll be sure to keep you in the loop while I'm down there. But, Derek, it was awesome having you on the show. Like I mentioned before this, we're going to get you back on here. I want you to be able to tell your story. There's so much to unpack. But I'm glad you could make it tonight. It was awesome hearing all your picks for this season's championship, and I wish your picks luck.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. That's all I got for you guys today. Thanks for listening. I will catch you guys all next time on Outside the Oval.